All right, strap yourselves in because today we're diving headfirst into a story ripped straight from the headlines.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Picture this. A school in Ireland. Peaceful, ordinary, kids running around.
Typical school day.
Exactly. And suddenly, bam, a teacher gets arrested right there on the grounds.
Whoa, that escalated quickly. What happened?
That's what we're here to find out. Today, we're doing a deep dive into what went down at Wilson's hospital school.
Okay, I'm all ears.
We're going to try to see this from all sides, understand everyone's perspective, and figure out how it all fits into the bigger picture in Ireland.
Sounds like a puzzle.
It kind of is. So our source material describes this intense scene. Enoch Burke, the teacher, is being put into a Garda van.
Garda van, that's the Irish police, right?
Right. And people around him are losing it, shouting, accusations flying around.
Like what?
Stuff like abuse, mutilation, cries of shame. It's chaotic.
Whoa, that's heavy.
And Burke is right there in the middle of it, shouting about his right to be there, his duty to his students. He's refusing to back down.
Sounds like he's really standing his ground.
Absolutely. And from what we can gather, this whole duty thing seems to stem from him refusing to use a student's preferred pronouns.
Ah, okay, so this is where things get complicated.
You got it. He connects this directly to his beliefs, opposing what he calls transgenderism.
So it's not just a simple disagreement. This is about deeply held convictions colliding head-on with changing social norms.
Exactly. And it's a mess.
Big time.
But wait, there's more? The source also introduces Burke's mother, who basically doubles down on everything he's saying.
Okay, what's her take on all this?
She sees preferred pronouns as the slippery slope, leading to all sorts of horrible things for young people.
Like what?
She mentions puberty blockers, surgery stuff she calls abuse, linking it to agony, regret, even suicide.
Wow, she's really laying out her fears.
Yeah, and she doesn't stop there. She goes after the Irish legal system and child protection agencies, specifically Judge Barry O'Donnell and Tesla.
Tesla, who are they again?
They're the child protection agency in Ireland.
Got it.
But she's convinced they're pushing this transgender ideology.
So there's a deep mistrust there, a sense that the system is working against her beliefs.
Absolutely. But before we get into all that, let's back up a bit. The source mentions this isn't Burke's first rodeo with the courts.
What do you mean?
He was actually kicked out of a court appearance before for questioning the judge.
No way. The same Judge O'Donnell in this case?
The one and only.
Wow, okay, so this guy isn't afraid to challenge authority.
Nope, not one bit. And speaking of Judge O'Donnell, the source tells us he was nominated to the High Court by Leo Varadkar, the first openly gay Taoiseach of Ireland, and appointed by President Michael D. Higgins.
Interesting.
It's a little detail that might be more important than it seems.
Right, because it adds to that whole perception of bias that Burke and his mother have toward the judge and the whole system.
Exactly. It's like a puzzle where every piece matters. And we haven't even gotten to Tesla yet.
Yeah, Burke's mother is clearly not a fan. But what role do they actually play in all of this?
So Tesla, they're the Irish Child and Family Agency, responsible for, protecting kids and making sure they're safe.
That makes sense why they're involved.
And Burke's mother, she doesn't hold back, calling them out for pushing transgender ideology. She even claims they discriminate against Christians when they hire people.
Wow. She really sees them as part of the problem.
Totally. She believes the system is rigged against them.
So we've got this intense scene, a teacher claiming duty, a mother who's terrified, and claims of a biased system. This is a lot to unpack.
No kidding, but we're just getting started.
Okay, so we've laid it all out. The scene, the players, everyone's perspective. Now it's time to dig into the real meat of this issue.
Right, we've got this teacher who feels like his duty is to not use a student's preferred pronouns, a mother who sees this whole thing as part of some dangerous agenda, and a community that's obviously divided. It's like they're all speaking different languages.
And that's exactly why this is so interesting. It's like a mini version of these huge global debates about gender identity and how traditional values clash with these, evolving social norms.
So let's break it down. What's the core argument here?
On one side, you've got Burke and his mom. They seem to link preferred pronouns to this thing they call transgenderism, which they see as a negative thing. They're saying that affirming a student's gender identity through language is basically a step towards medical interventions that they believe are harmful.
So they're drawing a line saying this is where we stand and we're not moving. But then on the other side, you have people who believe that denying someone's gender identity can be really damaging.
Exactly, and that's where those accusations of abuse and mutilation come from. It's about recognizing the potential harm, psychologically, emotionally, that can come from being misgendered or dead named.
So it's like two totally different ways of looking at the same situation. For Burke, using the wrong pronoun is like going against his beliefs. But for the student and the people supporting them, not using the right pronoun is like attacking their identity.
And we can't forget, this isn't some theoretical debate. There's a real student at the center of this, a kid whose well-being is being directly impacted by all of this.
And this is where Tesla, the Child Protection Agency, comes in, right? They're the ones who have to make sure kids are safe. But how do they even approach a situation this complicated?
It's got to be a tough spot.
Yeah.
They have to consider everyone's rights and beliefs while also making the child's best interests the priority. And in a case like this, where both sides are claiming potential harm, it gets even trickier.
It's like walking a tightrope. Burke and his mom are saying the legal system and child protection are biased against their beliefs, but others see Burke's actions as a form of abuse that needs to be dealt with.
It's a balancing act, for sure. It shows that tension that happens when individual beliefs clash with how we're understanding human rights, which is constantly evolving.
And let's not forget the bigger picture here. This whole thing is happening against the backdrop of a rapidly changing social landscape. People are talking about and understanding gender identity in new ways, and for those who hold more traditional views, that can be pretty unsettling.
Oh, absolutely. This is playing out all over the world, this push and pull between people who feel like their values are under attack and those who are fighting for recognition and equality.
So this case, even though it's happening in Ireland, is really a window into this massive global conversation. It forces us to ask these big questions. How do we protect individual freedom while also ensuring everyone is safe and well? How do we create spaces where everyone feels respected and valued, even when people disagree fundamentally?
And those aren't easy questions to answer. There's no magic solution. But by talking about these things, trying to understand how complex they are, we can hopefully find a better, more compassionate way to handle these challenges.
Okay, so we've looked at the different sides, the potential harm, and the broader context, but let's get back to the specifics of this case. What are some of the legal and ethical things we need to consider here?
Well, one of the main questions is whether Burke refusing to use the student's preferred pronouns is actually discrimination under Irish law.
Which brings up that whole debate about freedom of speech versus hate speech. And that's a messy one.
For sure. Burke's saying he has a right to express his beliefs. But then there's the issue of whether those beliefs are actually harming the student, which would be seen as a form of discrimination legally.
And what about the judge's role in all of this? Remember, Burke's mom thinks Judge O'Donnell is biased because of his past work with Tusla and being appointed by the first openly gay Taoiseach.
Right, and that goes straight to the heart of whether people trust the legal system. If they think it's biased, the whole process loses legitimacy.
Like a domino effect, one perceived injustice leads to a whole wave of distrust. And in this case, that distrust seems to go beyond the judge to Tusla and the entire child protection system.
And that distrust has real-world consequences. If people don't think the system is fair, they might not cooperate, which makes it harder to protect vulnerable people.
So it's not just a theoretical legal issue. It affects people's lives and whether institutions can actually function.
Exactly. And that brings us to another big ethical question. How do you balance individual rights with the well-being of others? How do we respect someone's right to say what they think while also protecting someone else from harm?
It's a classic dilemma with no easy answers, but it's something we as a society have to figure out, especially as we're dealing with these increasingly complex issues of gender identity and social justice.
And it's something we'll keep exploring in the last part of this deep dive. We'll look at what could happen with this case, what it means for education and child protection policies, and ultimately what it all means for you, the listener.
Wow. The last two parts, we really went deep on this case, and man, it's been a wild ride. We started with what seemed like a simple arrest and ended up in this tangled mess of legal stuff, ethical stuff, social stuff. It's a lot.
Yeah, it shows how something that seems like it's just happening in one place can actually connect to these huge global issues, starting conversations that go way beyond that one event.
Totally. And that's what makes it so interesting for our listeners. This isn't just about Ireland. It's about how we as a society deal with these increasingly complicated issues around gender identity and individual rights stuff that's happening everywhere.
It really makes you think about your own beliefs, your own biases, how you interact with people who see things differently. I think that's the real takeaway here.
Okay, so let's switch gears a bit. We've talked about the arguments, the background, the potential harm. What happens now? What are the possible outcomes? This can't just keep going on forever, right?
Well, the Irish legal system is doing its thing, and there are a few ways this could go. The court could side with Burke, upholding his right to free speech, which could set a precedent for other cases like this in the future.
That would definitely shake things up,
For
wouldn't it?
sure. Or the court could rule against him, saying his actions were discriminatory, maybe even backing up the school's right to enforce their policies on inclusivity and using preferred pronouns.
Which would send a very different message, saying schools have a duty to protect all students and make them feel welcome.
Exactly. And then there's TISLA, the Child Protection Agency. Whatever the court decides could affect how they handle similar situations in the future, how they balance the rights of everyone involved.
It's like every possible outcome just opens up a whole new set of questions and challenges. It really shows that there are no easy answers here.
Definitely not. It's a complicated situation with a lot riding on it. That's why it's so important to have these conversations, to really understand the nuances and to approach it all with sensitivity and a willingness to hear what other people have to say.
Because at the end of the day, we're all trying to figure out how to live in this world where individual rights and social justice are constantly bumping up against each other in these increasingly complex ways.
It's about finding that sweet spot, protecting free speech, ensuring that vulnerable individuals are safe, and creating a society where everyone feels respected and valued.
And that's a journey we're all on together. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's turn it over to you, the listener. Why does this matter to you? Why should you care about what's happening at a school in Ireland?
Because these same conversations are probably happening where you live, in your community, at your work, maybe even within your own family. It's a global issue, and understanding how complicated it all is essential for navigating the world around us.
It's about recognizing that these aren't just abstract debates. They have real-world consequences for real people.
And it's about having those conversations with empathy, with respect, and with a willingness to learn from each other.
So as you go about your day, think about this case. How does it connect with your own experiences and what you believe? What are your thoughts on balancing individual rights with the well-being of others? How can we create spaces where everyone feels safe and respected, no matter their gender identity? These are questions worth thinking about, talking about, debating.
And remember, there's no single right answer. It's about having those thoughtful conversations, listening to each other, and trying to understand each other even when we disagree. That's how we learn, that's how we grow, and that's how we create a more inclusive and compassionate world.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And with that, we're wrapping up our deep dive into this fascinating and complex case. We hope this episode has given you something to think about and maybe even sparked some important conversations of your own.
Until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep engaging with the world around you.